For the first time in more than half a century, humans are preparing to leave Earth's orbit and journey to the Moon and back in just 10 days. But before you start thinking this is another small step for man, like it was back in 1969, this particular mission doesn't involve humans actually landing on the Moon. Now here's where it gets interesting. The point of Artemis is to prove beyond a shadow of doubt that humans can venture into the unknown and do human things and make it back home safe and sound. On this mission, it takes 4 astronauts to prove this theory. The crew would be going to the other side of the Moon. Think of it as the unexplored part and testing to see if humans can tread that far. More like throwing caution to the wind and seeing if you'd survive. But it's a safe and calculated risk. This is Artemis II. And the mission is simple. Prove that humanity still knows how to go the distance and is ever willing and ready to do just that. It comes as a result of the success of Artemis I, an unmanned mission conducted in 2022. Now, it's time to take it up a notch. Scheduled for launch in 2026, Artemis II is NASA's first crewed mission beyond low Earth orbit since Apollo 17 in 1972. 50 years later, this mission marks the return of astronauts to deep space, riding the most powerful rocket ever built, on a 10-day journey that will carry them nearly 500,000 miles through space and back again. This flight is not about spectacle or making big waves. Think of it as a preparation for something much bigger, which might seem small, but it's actually planting seeds, which is also noteworthy. It is also about validation. Every system, every human function, every assumption made since Artemis I must now be tested with real people on board. Before humans can live on the Moon again, or push onward to Mars, they must first survive the journey there and back. Artemis II is a test mission, but that label undersells its importance. It follows Artemis I, the uncrewed test flight launched in 2022, which successfully sent the Orion spacecraft around the Moon and safely returned it to Earth. Artemis II takes the next logical step, putting humans inside Orion and pushing them beyond Earth's gravitational comfort zone. This will be the first time humans travel to the far side of the Moon, the hemisphere permanently hidden from Earth's view since the Apollo era. The mission will last approximately 10 days. The spacecraft will travel roughly 230,000 miles from Earth, passing within 400 miles of the lunar surface, before looping around the Moon and returning home on a carefully calculated free return trajectory. There will be no landing, no moonwalks, no descent engines firing toward the surface. The objective is simpler and far harder. Prove that the entire system works with humans aboard. If it's successful, it's a testament to how far humanity can come together and push, and also how far we've come in over 2.5 decades. 4 astronauts will fly Artemis II, each selected not for symbolism, but for capability. Commander Reed Wiseman leads the mission, a naval aviator, engineer, and Baltimore native. Wiseman has been an astronaut since 2009 and has already logged 107 days in space aboard the International Space Station. He brings operational discipline, flight leadership, and long-duration spaceflight experience to a mission that demands all 3. Pilot Victor Glover sits in the right seat. A test pilot, combat veteran, engineer, and former legislative fellow for the U.S. Senate, Glover has flown more than 40 aircraft across 24 combat missions during Operation Iraqi Freedom. Selected as an astronaut in 2013, he combines technical precision with real-world decision-making under pressure. Then there's mission specialist Christina Koch, who brings deep scientific and engineering expertise. An electrical engineer and Antarctic researcher, Koch holds the record for the longest single spaceflight by a woman, spending 328 consecutive days in orbit. She understands what prolonged confinement and isolation do to the human body and mind, knowledge critical for future deep space missions. And finally, there's also mission specialist Jeremy Hansen, who represents Canada's contribution to Artemis. A colonel in the Royal Canadian Air Force, pilot, physicist, and former firefighter, Hansen earned his wings at just 16 years old. Selected as a Canadian Space Agency astronaut in 2009. Artemis II will be his first spaceflight and will make him the first Canadian to travel to the Moon. Together, this crew embodies experience, restraint, and technical competence. That is exactly what this mission requires. Of course, only the best and brightest would be selected for such a mission. Artemis II will lift off from Launch Complex 39B at Kennedy Space Center in Florida, a pad steeped in history. Apollo missions launched from here. Space shuttles thundered into orbit from this ground. Now, a new chapter begins, signaling many beginnings. The rocket is called the Space Launch System, or SLS. It stands taller than the Statue of Liberty and generates more thrust than any rocket ever launched with humans aboard. At liftoff, SLS produces 8.8 million pounds of thrust. Two massive solid rocket boosters ignite first, delivering the raw power needed to escape Earth's gravity. Between them sits the orange core stage, a towering structure filled with super-cold liquid hydrogen and liquid oxygen. Painted on its sides is the America 250 logo, commemorating the United States' 250th anniversary. The rocket is not the product of a single city or state. Engineers across the United States contributed to its construction, from propulsion systems and avionics to welding techniques and heat shielding. When the countdown reaches 0, the boosters ignite. The ground shakes, and, with millions watching on site and on screens, Artemis II begins its ascent. Within minutes, the solid rocket boosters burn out and separate, falling into the Atlantic Ocean. The core stage continues firing until orbital velocity is achieved, then detaches, leaving Orion and its upper stages alone in space. Above the core stage sits the Interim Cryogenic Propulsion Stage, or ICPs. This upper stage provides the precise push needed to send Orion out of Earth orbit and onto its lunar trajectory. Attached to Orion is the European Service Module, developed by the European Space Agency. This module supplies power, propulsion, oxygen, water, and thermal control. It is the engine room of the spacecraft, handling orbital adjustments and course corrections throughout the mission. At the top sits the crew module, also known as the Capsule. The astronauts call it Integrity. This is their home. Inside Integrity, the crew will eat, sleep, exercise, work, communicate, and use the spacecraft's toilet system. It is small, confined, and deliberately minimal, designed for survival and efficiency rather than comfort. Importantly, Integrity is the only part of the spacecraft that returns to Earth. Above the capsule is the Launch Abort System, a tower equipped with powerful motors designed to yank the crew capsule away from the rocket in milliseconds if something goes wrong during ascent. It is never intended to be used, but it must work perfectly if needed. Orion will rely heavily on autopilot systems for navigation and stability. Much of the flight is automated, but astronauts remain fully capable of manual control. They monitor thrusting events, verify trajectory burns, and cross-check onboard computers. This balance between automation and human oversight is critical. Deep space missions demand autonomy, but humans must remain in command. After launch, Orion will orbit Earth for approximately 1 day. This phase allows mission controllers and the crew to verify every system before committing to the Moon. Once the spacecraft performs its translunar injection burn, there is no quick way back. When the engines fire, Orion enters a free return trajectory. This flight path is a carefully calculated arc that uses the combined gravitational pull of Earth and the Moon to carry the spacecraft around the Moon and naturally guide it back toward Earth without continuous propulsion. The journey to the Moon takes about 4 days. Orion will pass behind the Moon, entering a region permanently hidden from Earth. For a period of time, communication will go silent. Just 4 humans, a spacecraft, and the Moon's gravity guiding them along their path. At closest approach, Orion will pass roughly 400 miles above the lunar surface. The astronauts will see landscapes no human has seen in half a century. Cratered terrain, shaped by billions of years of impacts. But there is no stopping, as that's not the mission. The spacecraft continues moving, slingshotting around the Moon and setting up its return trajectory. After the lunar flyby, Orion performs a series of adjustments to fine-tune its re-entry corridor. This is just as important as setting off in the first place. Returning to Earth is not simple. Too shallow an angle, and the capsule skips off the atmosphere like a stone on water. Too steep, and heat loads exceed design limits. The margin for error is narrow. Over the next 4 days, the crew monitors systems, conducts final tests, and prepares for separation. Eventually, Integrity detaches from the European service module. The service module burns up in the atmosphere. The crew capsule does not. Finally, Integrity re-enters Earth's atmosphere at speeds exceeding 24,000 miles per hour. The heat shield endures temperatures hotter than the surface of the Sun. Plasma envelops the capsule, cutting off communication during the blackout phase. Then, parachutes deploy. The capsule slows and descends toward the Pacific Ocean, where the US Navy recovery teams wait. After splashdown, the mission is over. But the program is not. It's actually a signal for something much greater to come. Maybe a trip to Mars and back? Artemis II exists for one reason: to make future missions possible. Later missions aim to establish a sustained human presence. Eventually, Artemis becomes the proving ground for Mars. But none of that happens if Artemis II fails. If Artemis I proved the hardware, Artemis II proves the humans. And if Artemis II succeeds, it clears the path for humanity's return to the lunar surface for the first time in generations. This is not nostalgia, it is preparation. In 2026, 4 astronauts will leave Earth behind, loop around another world, and come home. They aren't doing it because it is easy or because it is safe. But before humanity can go further, it must remember how to go there at all.